had a really good time talking about the megafauna and this and that and this and that. But at the end of the day, you know what? Global business is about plants. And if we think about wildlife, no, just think about it. I'm going to show you in a little while the different size of the markets that we're talking about. And it's also about an understanding of what is nature. When we talk about a wildlife economy and a landscape, it consists of many different things. The other point I just want to make is that when we think of standards and certification, especially third-party certification, there are very few wild standards out there. There is MSC, of course, the fishing people, that's fine. And apart from that, there's what? Nothing, only really FairWild. So I'm using FairWild not just because that's my bread and butter, but also because it is probably the most established standard for this kind of use. And I think it has potential lessons and things that could be said for others. I also want to just point out that plants were traded 8,000 years ago. Think of frankincense. Think of a lot of the products we're talking about. These were in trade thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. They actually have a body of practice in trade and sustainable trade that we can learn from. So, talking about standards and certification, it's two things, right? It's a standard. You have to know what you want, and you have to know what it means to get that sustainability. And then there's a certification. Something has to be in place so that everybody, whether it is the harvester, whether it is the producer, the distributor, the manufacturer, the brand, or it's the consumer, everybody has to know. Everybody has to be assured that that has happened. And that's the key to third-party standards and certifications. So where do we start? We start at the bottom. What is the vision? What is it we're trying to achieve here? And I felt that in some way, even when we talk about the fauna and CITES and this and that, let's keep in mind, what are we trying to achieve? We are trying to achieve a globe that is sustainable in itself, a feat of nature that encompasses all of us. Bear in mind, we are part of nature. So it's humans, it's animals, it's mopani worms, it's other bugs. Beyondry can tell us what kinds of bugs. And it is the plants. It's everything in one symbiotic process. Now, when we're talking wildlife economies, wild harvesting, it is unique in terms of standards in that the use, the actual sustainable use, means that conservation is happening. And that's the exciting factor. So when you think about a standard and you think about certification, first, are you using that species sustainably, whether it is a baobab or a whatever? Secondly, how does the use of that interact with other species in that landscape? And thirdly, what does that sustainable use say for that landscape as a whole? For example, that landscape is not going to be torn down and turned into a bloody soya plantation or something. We're conserving it because we're using it sustainably. That's important. But then we get to people who are part of nature and who, in the context of plants, may have been using and harvesting those things for, as I said, 8,000 years. So who are they? They are not employees. They are, by and large, people, often marginalized groups, very, very poor, living in heaven knows where, the depths of Somaliland or the depths of Zimbabwe or in Morocco or in anywhere in the world. But they have had traditional practice, ways of using these things and harvesting them sustainably for a very long time. I love to talk about frankincense. It's my favorite product. It comes from a really tough part of the world. How do you think about how you treat those people? They are not employees, so they don't have the protections of labor law and this and this and this and that. So how do you have to think carefully? What does it mean to give to those people, those individuals, respect and dignity and a dignified life, recognizing and appreciating what they have harvested forever? How do you treat them well economically? What is fair pricing? You can't just say, oh, it's a minimum wage equivalent. Rubbish. That's absolutely not good enough. You have to think about what is the process by which you will figure out what is a fair price. You have to take into account market prices. You have to take into account, okay, this person is harvesting this for 3 months of the year. What are they doing the other 9 months of the year? How did their livelihood get constructed? And you have to think about their costs. They are traveling sometimes hundreds of miles out into the bush to do the harvesting. How do they get there? What tools do they need? So there's a whole lot of issue about economic equity. And then, of course, there's a community dimension. That is a community that developed the knowledge of that product, heaven knows how long ago. That is the community that had access. That is the community that owns that product. How do we recognize that? I know there's lots of good legal stuff out there. There is ABS agreements and all those good things, and those are important. And any standard must ensure compliance. I'm not here to argue about CITES right, CITES wrong, whatever. I'm just here to say CBD, CITES, local regulation, national regulation, you must comply. But more than that, it's about respect and dignity and contribution to that community. It's about respecting how you get access and making sure it is legitimate, both legal terms and socially and morally. And then finally, of course, it's about how do you construct a business? Because at the end of the day, let's be honest about this, money makes the world go round. We will only conserve this planet if we use it sustainably and if we have good markets that are able to generate the kinds of benefits to those people. So what does it mean to have a business? What does it mean to have a standard for a sustainable business? How do you guarantee transparency, traceability, quality? How do you think about the power inequities, the power asymmetries that exist between a big perfume company and a wild harvester? How do you construct that value chain? So step one is that you have to have a standard that specifically deals with all of those issues that I mentioned now and much more, because that standard, if it is upheld, must contribute to a world where nature, people, and business thrive together. Okay, that's actually the bulk of my speech, so the rest is quick, I promise. Now, there's mechanics to make it work, right? And mechanics have got to do with, you have to have your standard, you have to have a set of principles, you have to have a set of criteria, you have to have checklists, and you have to have, I would argue, for real effectiveness, third-party certification. We, as FairWild, we own our standard, we update our standard every year, we do all these things, we develop all these tools, all those kinds of things, but EcoCert or Series or one of the other CBs that normally do organic certifications, we train them up specially in our standard, and they come in third party and certify. That's how you know. That's how you provide assurance so that the consumer right at the other end knows and everybody else knows that this was properly done. But it's important as well. It's important for traceability. As I mentioned, you need to know that that frankincense or that baobab seed was harvested in Mozambique or wherever, where it went step by step till it got somewhere else, so that we can provide assurance that it was sustainably harvested, that people were treated properly, and that the landscape was treated properly. Show legality. You need to do all of this to provide consumer confidence. And we need consumers to have confidence because, people always talk about educating consumers and this and that. At the end of the day, most consumers, and this is proven in the McKinsey reports, want to do the right thing. You have to enable consumers to do the right thing. You have to empower consumers to feel that they have a voice by making the right choices. It's terribly important. It also helps you to attract investors. We know that wildlife enterprises have a very hard time attracting investors. Typically, it's small businesses dealing with wild harvesters, dealing with unpredictable spots of life. It's not easy. How do you attract investors? Well, you know that you have a predictable, properly sustainable business that is well constructed. Then, when you get further on the value chain up, you are able to tell compelling stories. And those stories, and this is not stories as in fiction, this is stories as in reality, right? Just to make sure we're not misunderstanding each other here. But being able to bring those stories of frankincense harvesting and the people out in the depths of Somaliland facing incursion from Al-Shabaab and heaven knows what else, the stories of the people harvesting mangongo fruits in Namibia, the stories of people harvesting baobab in Zimbabwe, the stories of people harvesting shea in West Africa. Bringing those to life, bringing those two players in the value chain makes an enormous difference and builds the commitment that we need. We argue, finally, it helps you be future ready. It helps you focus. Where is this world going? Where is the symbiotic relationship of a flourishing planet going? Let's do it through sustainability, sustainable use in wildlife. Right, I'm just going to give a few examples now because, being the Plankies Pursuant, I have to talk about these things. Because I'm telling you, the money is in plants, right? The action is in plants. The landscape consists of plants. Yes, a few animals as well, but plants, okay? So baobab, now I did a little bit of research to check on the international demand for baobab, but I kept on finding very reputable companies that said it was like 2 billion a year or something. And I thought, no, actually that doesn't sound quite right to me. I don't think it's quite there at the moment, but it's getting there. So we didn't put a number there in the end. But what's important about baobab is, I went to a baobab conference a little while ago, and the guy that was talking about climate impact said, wonderful thing, he said, baobab is the last plant standing. No matter what happens in terms of climate change or whatever, baobabs will be there. And it's true. But what is particularly interesting about baobab also is that we use so much of it. The leaves are used for tea. The fruit is used for food, for made into power, put into shots and power drinks. Increasingly now, the seeds, there's a huge movement in baobab seed oil going into the wellness and personal care industries. Absolutely amazing. The husk is used for biochar. So you use so much of it. It's a real economic opportunity at the local level. Another one is shea. Shea is just ginormous. I don't want to tell you, this says that the shea butter market was worth $655 million in 2020. Think about that. We're talking about 2.4 billion by 2030, I think. That's enormous. I'm just working right now on a very, very big, with a very, very big company based in Sweden that does shea harvesting. And the project I'm doing with them is mostly in Ghana and Burkina Faso. That one project, we're talking 250,000 women. Just imagine, those women's lives will be transformed. They'll be treated with dignity and respect, and they will have real livelihoods, and the shea will still be there. It will be sustainably managed. It is just unthinkably amazing of the impact that we can have on this continent. And the last one, of course, is my all-time favorite, frankincense. I just love it so. It's just, you think about the hardship of life in Somalia. No joke, that place. And you think about what people endure and have to live through. No other opportunities other than to use what they've got sustainably, which is frankincense, it's myrrh, it's gum arabic and things like that. Frankincense, we've been trading it for 8,000 years. And not just for incense in the church and in the home, but for oils. It's in the aromatherapy market. It's in the perfume market. It's all over the place. $280 million, I think it was, in 2023. And that's predicted to go up to 588 million by 2033. Just think what that means in money terms. Think what it means in human terms. Think what it means in terms of the planet.